Hey everybody, this is your local idiot. I had a tiny little thought. I thought I'd share it with you. Sorry about that. Uh, so today is September, I don't know, 21st or something maybe, Sunday. And I've been not posting for the last few days. I don't know, a week or so now, something like that. Because the news has been dumb, and I've been kind of deciding what I was going to say and everything, if I was going to say anything. But the whole the assassination of that political commentator type thing, influencer. Um, been watching all the, and then Jimmy Kimmel got pulled because he made a comment. But the reality was, I listened to that over. I watched that over and over and over again, and the comment, the stuff that he said actually was actually pretty respectful about the guy that got killed. Even though the guy that got killed was a complete d-bag. Uh, I had never heard of him before. My wife said, "Hey, this guy got assassinated or whatever." And I'm like, who's that? Um, I'd seen his face once I saw a picture of him. I'm like, okay, I'd seen his face somewhere. He looks like a cartoon character or something like that. But it turns out, everybody and their uncle's been reposting like quotes of his, like from his. I guess he has a radio show or had. He doesn't have nothing now. But a radio show or a podcast or something like that. Anyway, and it was supposed to be some type of political thing. I mean, that's popular these days. A lot of, it's always been popular, I guess, but these days especially with the division in America. I don't know if there's division everywhere like there is here. I mean, there's lots of crazy crap going on around the world between Russia and Ukraine and Israel and Palestine and just tons and tons of stuff. There's division everywhere, right? Well, even within within Israel, there's been tons of division between the people that are sort of like foaming at the mouth, wanting every Palestinian man, woman, and child. They want them just like exterminated, and it's hard to imagine that that's a thing. But that's, at least that's what we see on the news. Crowds of people, pretty much saying that. And Russia and Ukraine, that's a whole nother stupid thing. I feel very bad for the Russian people because I don't think there's a ton of Russian people that are all about taking out Ukraine. I think that's very, very Putin. He has this big grand vision of what he wants to do, and he doesn't care about the people. But I I was watching a documentary the other day about Joseph Stalin, and I knew Joseph Stalin was a bad guy. I mean, he's a he was a world leader. In made a heck of a name for himself, that's for sure. And he presided over a real brutal time of communism in the USSR. But I had no idea how brutal. I guess I'm simple. I I pay attention to stuff that's in front of me, stuff that's important to me every day, kind of a thing, and then the rest of it I sort of find out as I go, uh, one way for one reason or another, and sometimes it's even an accident. But I was watching this documentary about Joseph Stalin, and holy moly, I had no idea how messed up the stuff he did was. I mean, he was personally responsible for literally millions of deaths in Ukraine back in the early 1900s. I mean, Joseph Stalin was born in the 1800s, and his real hardcore stuff was during like World War II and all that. But prior to World War II, he had this gigantic campaign about Ukraine. Ukraine was like sort of like Iowa, you know. It was they called it the breadbasket of the Soviet Union, and it's where, you know, the never-ending fields and stuff. And I didn't know they had combines back then, but I was watching old video, movie reel stuff, and he, I mean, if I don't know why anybody would do it on purpose, but if you're ever interested to find out the actual truth, there's some documentaries about that. He starved to death farmers and their families and everybody in Ukraine, through like a policy that was like he'd made be a thing. And no matter how many times people, even his own people, were saying, hey, just so you know, everybody there is starving to death, they didn't care at all. You know, horrible. Anyway, so back to this guy that just got assassinated. It's being used as a tool, obviously, a gigantic propaganda type thing and a distraction. We hear that a lot, distractions, you know, like political distraction stuff. But this era right now, since about 2020 to now, has just been nutty with distraction. You know, every time something goes awry or some bad news comes out, you know, there's all this stuff where, you know, there's never ending amounts of stuff, which everybody knew that when Trump got elected, that that was the start of the shit show. And it was going to be, you know, which is kind of funny. According to Trump, that's all about ratings, you know, the drama and all that kind of stuff. He actually wants that. And I guess there's something to be said for that kind of, I mean, I know less about the TV business than he does, but my observation is that I think the American government, which is, you know, the most powerful single government in the world, between, you know, our military strength and our economy and stuff, we're the strongest economy in the world, anyway. And a whole bunch of decisions in the last few years have really kicked our ass that way, and they're going to continue to. And you know, for anybody that watches this that's not American, believe me, I got plenty of American pride, but we're, you know, I never considered us to be, you know, as important that we're dominant or anything like that, but we are not anymore. You know, militarily, yeah, for sure. And there's lots of stuff, you know, I'm really plugged into the military and have been forever. And there's lots of stuff that 99% of people don't know anything about. And that goes for every big military around the world. But for America, for sure. I don't know about those for sure. I'm only speculating about those. I don't have to speculate about America's military. I'm up to, I'm mostly up to speed. There's lots of new shit that I'm sure could have come out, but just building on the stuff that I was personally aware of, we were head and shoulders above anybody in the 80s and in the 90s. And barring some crazy event, we've stayed there. So, I mean, you know, nothing stays static. You know what I mean? With the stuff that we had going on in the 80s and 90s, if they just did normal amounts of technical improvements based on the technical stuff we had then, we're still way ahead. And I will say, even with the fact that China has done this amazing job of really kicking it into ultra high gear, and what they did with their country's infrastructure and stuff, and the electric vehicle thing and all that, they have totally kicked our ass. life is a competition between each individual. Like in America, we're competitors, and just the way it is. It's one of the unfortunate things that why we're so divisive. We haven't figured out, or lately, I guess the line's gotten blurred between competing with each other, which is fantastic in a lot of ways, and also the length we'll go to beat the hell out of the competition, to the point now where that we act like we hate each other. And I don't think it's an act. There's a whole bunch of people that straight hate each other. Coffee. Which is dumb. We're brothers and sisters. We're family. Every time I've gone elsewhere in the world, I start missing stuff that's familiar, and I think that's pretty common. The restaurants that I'm used to, the kinds of food, or our slang, speaking to an American, being surrounded by Americans. And I'm sure everybody from every country feels the exact same way. Nobody likes to miss home, But now it's almost like being a foreigner in your own country, People are so angry at each other. And there's always going to be weirdos out there, that are just fringe no matter what you do. But there was always this crazy comfort in meeting somebody from where you're from, when you're far away from home. And now, even in pretty much anywhere in America, a lot of people that you meet, they want to be foreign. They don't want you to be in their family, kind of a thing. And we're all Americans. I mean, I've stood shoulder to shoulder, doing all kinds of fun stuff with other Americans, and I just knew they had my back, and I had theirs for sure. Always. It's one of the things that has always made us great, as Americans. My family on my mom and dad's side came to this continent in the 1600s, which is kind of funny that they obviously didn't know each other. They're the two families, but they both came over within the same century. And they both did things to make their way, in this place. And they both of them settled in the middle of the country. My mother's people settled in the middle of the country, but north. And my father's people settled in the middle of the country, but south. And the military brought us together, So that's how my father and mother met. While he was serving in the Navy, she had been married to a man. She grew up in the Navy, but then she had been married to a man that was serving in the Navy in a similar unit to my father, submarines. And so they were stationed at the same submarine base in Norfolk, Virginia, where I was born. My father had just gone through a divorce. My mother had just gone through a divorce. The military is not easy for families. Lots of families stay together. I've got a really good friend that had some real difficulty, and they stayed together. I'm really happy it works out for them, because the biggest thing is it works out for the kids. They got little kids and stuff like that, and little kids, whether people think about it or not, really do benefit from having, the continuity of the two parents, and stuff. And I really like that those people. That buddy of mine is my best friend besides my wife, and I would happily take people always say this, but I'd happily take a bullet, or he's one of those people I'd give a kidney to, kind of a thing, and without batting an eye. And I'm glad things have worked out for him and his family. But kind of coming back around to the beginning of what this video is about. The division in America right now it's not near as bad as it's been in history, right? I mean, at one time there was a full-scale civil war. January 6th, the insurrection was a pretty huge moment of division in our country. Our current president specializes in division from the get-go of him being in office. His strategy has been to divide and conquer. And whereas every other president, I mean, no matter how good or bad they were, and there's been a lot of bad presidents, fundamentally, and it's hard to imagine because at one time I didn't understand. I thought there was some presidents that we had that were kind of the lowest of the low, and I had no idea how low that could really get. But those individuals that I thought were low had some real basic decency that I didn't appreciate. I guess you don't appreciate it until you're faced with the opposite. I used to think that Germany, 1930s Germany, was this perplexing thing because they allowed, and this was in my mind, they allowed the Nazi Party to take over and to murder millions of people, and then to start a war with the entire world, with the, insane, villain, like twisting his mustache kind of a thing of wanting to do what they were doing in Germany to the entire world. And I thought, there was something wrong with the German people, for permitting that in their country. And I guess the point of this life, I'm learning every day. I keep an open mind. It's like science. I don't know what's happening. My joke has always been every year that I'm alive, I realize I know less than I thought I did. But I'm now seeing firsthand how the German people got duped into permitting something like the Nazi Party from coming in and kind of taking over. And, they all kind of just looked at each other and like, okay, this is fucking weird. This guy's terrible. They're doing bad things, but it's going to stop, right? Yeah, it's going to stop, I mean, there'll be a next election, and then Hitler consolidated power and I mean, it went just so much farther than anybody in Germany could have imagined. And there were people that were foaming at the mouth, believing everything that he said. And I'm sure there were other people kind of around going, man, I thought they were, at least normal-ish, I mean, Germany was known then and to this day for their incredible intelligence in engineering and stuff like this. So they're not a stupid people. And it turns out, in my opinion, that the German people are the most similar to Americans of just about any people in the world. In that every time I've ever met Germans, we could have an easy conversation and, really kind of get where each other are coming from, even though there's a language barrier and stuff like that. Well, now I see when all the comparisons between like 1933 and 2025, how and Trump hasn't succeeded in doing almost anything that Hitler succeeded in doing in no time flat. Hitler, within a period of when he became chancellor, from there to like the September, which is like January to September, he accomplished more in destroying basically Germany than Trump will ever get to. I'm positive of that. Just because based on the time that Trump's been operating and our system is set up better. And not to mention we have the advantage of looking back at history and not just, like Democrats or left-leaning people. I'm not a Democrat, but Supreme Court, even though they're pretty much hand-selected for the most part by Donald Trump, which means just about in his pocket. there's one or two Supreme Court justices for the U.S. Supreme Court that are pretty much in his pocket. But recently, apparently, there was something about free speech that went before the Supreme Court, and it was a unanimous decision, which actually pleasantly surprised me that the two justices that I'm thinking about, that I've been very concerned about for many years, sided with what the Constitution says, and which is not what Donald Trump wanted. And so, and there's more and more and more people now, even people that had been rah, rah, rah Donald Trump, who are now coming forward and saying that no, this freedom of speech thing is the thing, and you can't do what you're doing, even though he's really trying to push for, like, that's Adolf Hitler, shut down, attacked people that were opposing parties, people with different opinions and stuff like this, and closed them down, sent them to prison, all kinds of stuff. That's not going to happen in America. And I just saw the first little positive direction that way, when the Supreme Court unanimously said, nope, free speech is a thing, and which shut down and tossed a case out, a lawsuit out by Donald Trump. He was trying to sue, I think it was ABC or somebody like that, for $15 million. And he tried to sue CBS, and then they settled. So it didn't go to court. CBS paid him like $15-16 million and got rid of Stephen Colbert, which, Stephen Colbert is not news. He was the opposition, comically opposing, Donald Trump. Problem is with Donald Trump, he's nuts, and he takes everything really personally, and he just he's a toddler, and he's kind of a spoiled, schoolyard bully type. And so he did that with Stephen Colbert, and then he did it with Jimmy Kimmel, and Jimmy Kimmel filed a lawsuit too. And the Supreme Court kicked out that $15 million lawsuit from Trump against, I think it was ABC. And so that's a really positive sign. The reason it's a positive sign to me is that the end of Donald Trump's term is coming up. It's like 3 years away. So when I say, when he got elected, I'm like, okay, we already saw the shit show part 1, and now this is shit show part 2, and he's way more organized in this one. But still, there's only so much he can do between now and the end of his term. Now, the problem is everybody has been predicting this, and some of it has been people being too excited, like the sky is falling. But some of it's been pretty possible, probable even, and this last little Supreme Court thing was the first inkling that he will not be allowed to do what Adolf Hitler did, which means, to consolidate power, to get rid of checks and balances officially, and to turn himself into a dictator, meaning that there's no elections anymore, that kind of stuff. Now I'm confident that's not going to happen, which is great because, I've really been having discussions with fellow veterans. It's been a long time since I was in the military, but I'm much more dangerous now than I was back then. Back then I got the training, which I remember every single, the military, I don't know if every country's military is good at this, but the U.S. military is excellent at making sure that every little thing they teach you goes into your brain for long term. And it really did for me. Now I say I'm more dangerous. I was Superman back then, and I was, 18, 19, 20 years old. I could do things that I still have a hard time wrapping my brain around physically. But I could never convince other people that I ever was able to do those things, because it just is too fanciful. I couldn't fly. But I sure flew downward a lot, and did stupid stuff like that and tried to kill myself constantly and always wound up, without a scratch and stuff. So I don't have the physical stamina. I mean, one time I ran 26 miles with a bunch of guys, a platoon, and never thought in my life that that's something that I could ever do, run 26 miles without stopping, And, the reality was it wasn't running like hardcore running. It was jogging, but it ain't no joke. 26 miles is insane. Walking 26 miles ain't fun, Running 26 miles is just ridiculous, But I could do that kind of stuff back then, along with a bunch of other guys. I can't do that kind of stuff now, but now I know a lot more shit than I used to know back then. There's the joke about old guys, beware, because they don't run anymore. And it's not because they're that brave. They just fucking can't. And so they're going to fight. Yeah. I'm the kind I'm not going to find a ditch to hide in. I'm going to fight because I got no choice, And I posted something recently on Facebook, and I recommend people look up my Facebook. It's under Steve Underwood. That's my name. And if you're interested, look it up. But whether you're in England or what, us veterans that were trained might be having to stand against, and that's still possible, that we might be having to stand against, who knows what. I'm not saying civil war or anything like that. In reality, in America, there won't be a civil war. It's almost impossible to have that happen. Our military and our law enforcement, even though there's some problems, with our law enforcement. I used to be a cop, okay, for 2 years. And I'm grateful that I saw the signs that it wasn't for me, right? And that I got out of it. Lots of people, I think, see the signs, but I was asking older guys that have been there a long time and that I admired. There's plenty of psychos, or whatever they are. But these guys all said the same thing. I asked if you were in 21 again, would you still do this? If you saw this. And without even hesitating, all of them said no. No, but I got kids and a mortgage, so. And I said, fuck that. I'm taking my chance while I had it. No kids, no mortgage, still to this day, no kids at least. And I got out of that. But I understand it. I went through a lot of training, went through an academy, and every day that I was there, I was training, And when I got out of it, I had an associate's degree in criminal justice, which meant, all this kind of, theory of this and that kind of stuff, So I went toward other things kind of in the same genre without being a public service person. So I did my 4 years of military, and then I did this 2 years of law enforcement. And I was always geared toward public service and helping others. And, I've never been afraid of stuff, and that's probably because I'm an idiot. But I've always thought, okay, fine, I'll use that natural thing. Some people are naturally smart with math and stuff like that. I'm naturally not scarable, and it's nothing to do whether I'm tough or not. It's just that I'm willing to take it farther than other people are willing to take it. And it's always served me well, that way. And so I've never stopped helping people. I've never stopped protecting people. I've made money at that in my life, as people do. They take their natural talents and make money with them and stuff. I got away from that stuff and did completely different things too. Because I don't know, I didn't want to ever get stuck in one role in my lifetime. And I certainly explored lots and lots of things. The good news is I always was able to come back to the simple knowledge that is just who I am. Whether I'm doing it for a living or not, it's who I am. And I've participated in whenever I needed to, whenever I step up. I carry a weapon, and it's not because I'm hoping to kill somebody. I have an uncle still, that when I asked him when I must have been about 10, he had a pistol on himself, and he was sitting there fishing. We saw him, my dad and I saw him fishing, and he had a 357 Magnum on his hip, like a cowboy or something. And I asked him, it was a beautiful day in a very peaceful place of America, and he was fishing, and I asked him, why you got a gun on? And he's like, oh, I'm just hoping to kill somebody. I'm hoping one day I get an excuse. And I really paid attention to that at that age. I was really wanting to know what this is about. And also the gun fascinated me, so that really caught my attention. But he really wanted the excuse to kill somebody, You'll never guess he's a MAGA guy now. So I'm just saying. But I carry a weapon almost every single day. I don't obviously carry one when it's inappropriate, and there are days when I'm just like, fuck it. I don't want to, I'll step in the way of a bullet today, but I'm not going to return fire, and there's a lot of weird shit in America now. As far as like, crazy people with guns doing stupid shit in traffic or whatever. That's why I do it. I carry it around, and, I stopped a robbery one time in a store just because I happened to be armed, and didn't have to kill anybody. I did have my gun out, and I did something that I was taught not to do. What I was taught to do, if you pull your gun out, you kill the person that makes you pull your gun out. And that's a law enforcement thing from back in the day. But I pulled my gun out and I put it in the guy's ribs, and I said, you need to knock it off, and he was trying to wrestle me and everything else. The difference was he wasn't armed. If he had had a gun or a knife, I'd have killed him. Just out of, that's what you do, but I'm really, really glad I didn't too, by the way, because it worked out. I had that gun in his ribs, and I said, this is a 45. If I put one in you, you're dead, And I had it stuck to his gut, and the other hand was holding something, his arm, and he was trying to wrestle me, and he was much younger than I am, and I said, stop. If I shoot you, you're not living past today. This is a stupid thing to do. And this is during COVID. And I basically walked him over to where the camera was in the store, and I pulled his mask off, and the video camera got him, and I said, get the fuck out of here. And he took off. And the cops, of course, showed up 2 or 5 minutes or something like that after he left. And they were all like, oh, it's a good thing you had a gun. And I'm like, yeah, I guess. But the guy was getting violent, and I thought about it lots afterward, and it was because of how angry he was about how black people had been recently treated. And he was reacting. And it turns out he was reacting to something that the cashier said. And she was innocently said it. She wasn't a racist or something like that. But something had recently happened in the news, and I remember it happening at the time. I was thinking, I wonder if this is related. And turns out it was, that he was just a young man on edge and sick and tired of, he felt like he was being pushed around as a human being, and he reacted badly, and he almost paid for it with his life. But he was wise enough to take my advice and get the fuck out of there, and so nothing had to happen. And I felt really bad about it later, because I learned about a month later that about a week after that, he came back into the store and apologized to the manager and to the lady that was the cashier that day. And God, I'm so glad I didn't kill him, because he was is a decent human being, and I could have fucked that up. I'm just really glad I didn't. But a person like me is who needs to carry a weapon. I have a bunch of professional training, the when to and when not to shoot somebody, that kind of stuff. When to and when not to pull your weapon, even though and I knew at the time it was a complete violation of my own personal rules. It just happened to be a situation where pulling the weapon was the one thing that was going to get that guy's attention and change the trajectory of where that day was headed for him and me. And everything ended up working out, But I don't want to kill anybody, There are plenty of people in this world that probably deserve that kind of stuff, but he wasn't one of them. And I could tell something was off, and it wasn't time, And it didn't get to that place of my life or other people's lives being that in danger, The only reason I pulled the weapon was I knew for sure that I could not handle him hand to hand. I'm not without ability, believe me. But he was a very athletic young man, and I'm not near as athletic as I used to be. And I was in the store because I was sick. I was there getting medicine. I had the flu or something, and I knew he could. He was really, really angry, and I knew that. And he rushed me actually when I said stop. He was manhandling this little cashier, was like 5 feet tall, and he was at least as tall as me. And he got over and he rushed me, and I'm like, okay, and he started like manhandling me like it was going to get bad. And so that's when I pulled, and I stuck it in his ribs, and I said, you better knock it off. I had him by the one hand just to kind of control his body a little bit. But, if he really wanted to fight, I would have had to start shooting, period, or I wouldn't have made it, kind of a deal. That's why I pulled, And so in America, yeah, everybody and their damn uncle has a gun. And that's one of the reasons I started carrying again. I used to carry for a living, and I stopped, for a long time, good 10 years at least. And somebody, there's always somebody shooting something up here. And then somebody walked into a movie theater in Colorado and killed a bunch of people and stuff like that. And I'm just like, fuck, man, me and my wife go to the movies every week, once a week, And I'm like, damn it, So I started carrying again, and it's a pain in the ass to carry. I fucking hate it. It's not comfortable, and it's a lot of responsibility. When I have it, I always feel it on my hip. My weapon's like 4 pounds, and I'm always feeling the weight, not just the weight of the actual weapon, but the weight of responsibility. That if I have to hurt somebody with my hands, there's a lot of time between that and killing them, that I can think. But with the gun, there's much, much less time, and so that's a lot of responsibility. But I carry it because of the people that just want to hurt random strangers. And they've got not just pistols, but like AR-15s and stuff like that. And it's just getting more and more and more common. So I carry literally just as an in case there's an issue that I need to intervene, and I need to have more than my hands, So, but the stuff that's going on in America right now is getting wild and crazy. And I want to assure everybody all over the world, I mean, most people are in different places, maybe Canada, maybe Mexico, I think they should care, but that America is not going to have another civil war. It's all but impossible, because after the Civil War happened, lots and lots and lots of things were changed about the United States and the military and stuff to make it more difficult for a civil war to happen, for a real actual secession to happen. For the first time since then, we've got a person in office that has done something identical almost to what Hitler did, and that he's convinced about half the people in the country. It's less than half, and it's falling every day, but he's convinced a ton of people that it might be time for an armed revolution, Now, the military isn't convinced. Law enforcement isn't convinced. And when I say that, I mean, there's part of the military, sure, they're convinced. Part of the law enforcement, absolutely, they're convinced. But the military has really basic responsibilities and lots of really big checks and balances. Individual officers, individual sergeants, they're non-commissioned officers called an NCO, non-commissioned officers. And they've taken lots of different classes and new oaths and stuff when they went from being a, private all the way up to a specialist. Then to be a sergeant, they had to take a new oath. And officers have to take oaths from the get-go about following, proper orders, legal orders, but not just legal orders. Legal, like in Germany, the SS claimed later when they got captured and were being tried that they were just following orders, and it was determined at that time officially that just following orders is no excuse. So, and a lot of those people were executed, which is great because of how it affects people now. So there will be a bunch of officers that know better. They know that they can't just say they were following orders, And so our military and our law enforcement is still on the side of good, even though there's individuals that are absolutely not. They will either do one of two things. They'll either comply and do their goddamn job, or they'll have to just leave. And we've had plenty of traitors in time. I mean, like in the Middle East, there was a major from Fort Hood that was in the Middle East at this time, and he was a psychiatrist of all things, and he happened to be a Muslim, and when they called like a whatever it is, some kind of holy command to kill bad people or whatever, he rolled some grenades into a command tent, and killed some people. You're going to have those kinds of people, and that's the kind of rebellion they're going to do. Little things here and there, but overall, we'll stay solid, And I just want everybody to know that. And then the other thing is that the United States has the largest civilian population that's professionally militarily trained. And we remember our oaths there. And I've explained to friends, I remember the oath. There was nothing in it that was an expiration date. So that oath was for life, Once we took that oath, we received that training, and it was a solemn vow. And it's way more. I wish marriage, the vows you take in marriage, were somehow as solidified in your body, in your mind, as military oaths. And it certainly was for me. I mean, they 100% were able to brainwash me. You put it that way if you want to, but it became a permanent fixture in my personality that will never be violated, right? So, and I don't own a ton of weapons like all these buddies of mine, or worse yet, the people that are nuts around the country, like AR-15s and stuff. I don't have any of that stuff. But in the next couple of years, I plan on expanding my gear a little bit, just so that if I run into something, I can be effective. I can be help. It's like when there was something called a derecho here where I live. It was a bad storm, almost like a hurricane, but we're in Iowa, no hurricane. And tons of trees came down in my town. And I went to my garage and grabbed my chainsaw and started helping. Everybody was helping, but I started helping the city, and we were cutting trees out of the way and all that kind of stuff. I will do the absolutely same thing. Instead of grabbing a chainsaw, it'll be whatever I have to grab. But America's going to stay solid, and we actually learn, America does anyway, by bad times. That's what shapes you. Imagine a sculptor carving things away to create this image, this statue. The carving away are the bad times. It's the things that shape what you are, right? And so this right now that we're going through, even though it's giving us a big black eye in the world, this is our next step in our evolution, right? Making black people free, You know, like some of us, my father taught us how to not be racist and how to be anti-racist, not just not be racist, but not to put up with stuff. And I'm also not going to put up with fascism in my country, not on a large scale. You know, people can be all the stupid they want. That old thing about I hate Illinois Nazis. Well, but they have the right to exist until they start fucking with people, and then that's something I won't put up with at all. We're not that country. We fought fascists and Nazis, and we won. And I'm the kind of person, and I think there's a whole lot more of like me that would use every skill we've got until our death, if need be, because I don't want to be around in a country like that, you know. And my country is way too awesome to allow it to turn into shit. So, just so you guys know, America hasn't given up on itself. We're waiting until the right time, the appropriate time. You know, right now we still have laws in place. Right now, Donald Trump is whatever 3 years from now he's going to be voted. He's not going to be voted out, but his party is going to be voted out. His party, you know, there's the Democratic Party, there's the Republican Party, and now there's the new fascist party, which is Donald Trump's people, MAGA. But MAGA is not official. What it is the fascist party. That's as close to being their official name as possible. They're not Republicans. They've destroyed that party, but I think that party can be fixed as long as we get rid of the fascist people. I used to admire a lot of Republicans. You know, I didn't necessarily admire their politics, but them as individuals, honorable people, you know, and we're going to fix this. So if anybody from any other country is watching this, and all my countrymen are watching this, thank you very much for voicing your opinion, standing up against your friends when necessary and family, to voice your opinion. Don't make it violent. You know, the only time we should be violent is in defense of other people being violent, right? Just like my thing with why I carry a gun. Nobody ever needs to know I've got it. You know, you don't need to be violent. You know, we get pissed. We wish we could just pound people sometimes, but you know, that's not right. You know, and the other thing is violence just begets more violence. You know, the people that we see going rabid monkey, they're just on the edge of being pushed off into. Some of them are nutty. They're on the edge of being pushed off into violence, and I think a lot of us on the other side of that are a little bit smarter. They're a little bit more in control of our emotions and stuff, self-aware. And when a person like that's thrashing about and hurting, the last thing we need to do is make it worse, you know. And so, no violence. Stay calm. No shouting. It doesn't help. It makes it worse. They won't listen to you when you're doing that. But when you're behaving with love, you know, and forgiving them for being stupid or for forgetting it's funny about some books I read, forgetting the face of their father is what it sounds, you know, is a great way to put that. Thank you, Stephen King. But I have not forgotten the face of my father. And I know a lot of people that haven't either. I mean, I've got my best friend. He's a perfect example of a person that is waiting, and he's less loud than I am, which almost everybody is. But it's going to work out because we're going to make sure it works out. The stronger people, mentally stronger people, are going to continue to be firm, but be kind. And people that can come back around, great. We'll happily have them back because they're Americans. They're our family. They're our cousins. You know, they're our relatives. And the ones that can't be helped, you know, I hope they're okay in the end. I hope they don't do something stupid in the end, because that won't be good. Don't be good for anybody, because in the end they can't win, because they're up against the rest of us. They can't win. So I just hope that everything comes out okay. But I will say this: rest of the world, don't worry, we got this. We need your help. I mean, we would have never won the Revolutionary War if it wasn't for the French. And I've never been a big fan of the French. But at the same time, we owe them everything. America owes them our freedom. That's something. America didn't beat the British. America with the French beat the British. So anyway, so you guys have a great day, and text me back, say something so I even know you're there or that you're listening, and like and subscribe, whatever. I don't know what that really does, but have a great day, everybody, and have a great week, because it's Sunday today. Yeah, that's right. Bye.